Hey everybody, welcome to On the Bubble. Today we have G2's Satthew. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to get down to talking about the major and just Rocket League in general.
Yeah, well, thanks for representing NA so well after completely destroying us this regional, or I guess this split, or whatever we're calling it now.
Yeah, it's the whole new format's confusing. I don't even know what to call it either. But no, I mean, it's always there was definitely some of that NA pride going into the major that we wanted to prove. NA is doing something over here. We're not just pushovers, and this esport isn't just going to be EU dominant for the future.
Yeah, so what was it like flying over there? I know, like, with originally they were like, hey, we're gonna fly you guys out like the day
Oh yeah.
before. Like, how has that been like behind the scenes? Because I feel like that's like the storyline nobody's talked about is like, how is Blast doing behind the scenes? Because
Yeah.
I've heard some good things in that they're taking the feedback from
Yep.
the teams, and so I just wanted to cover that storyline. Other than we're
No, you
almost on top again.
you kind no, you hit the nail on the head. Whoever says they're taking feedback, well, that is kind of the essence of what we've seen this LAN. I mean, we there was kind of that Twitter drama with Power, bringing up to the public light that the fact that Blast was looking to only set like fly people out the like day before media day essentially, and then so 2 days before the tournament would start. Um, and they were basically saying, in the past, ESL used to essentially fly you out wherever and whenever you wanted. Um, and there was just the agreement that you were going to make it to land on your own dime afterwards, where after your flights that they provided. And Blast essentially, starting out, just said you're flying into the destination this time, this day, no questions asked. So with them, they've just been taking feedback really well, and there's multiple things that land that they started out with one direction, people kind of complained, and they immediately fixed it. So they changed the flight details essentially, and they made it so you could fly. You still had to fly into Copenhagen if you wanted your flight provided, but they would do up to a week before. So that was a pretty good medium. Maybe still not to the level of ESL accommodations the past, and I think they should look into providing that if possible. I don't know about all the legalities behind it, because I think that was kind of alluded to as why that decision was made, and why they execute in that fashion. But that at least they showed improvement, and kind of what I was kind of mentioning before as well. There were issues with like the practice PCs when we started out at the LAN. They had pretty poor specs, and they were kind of framey for a lot of players. A lot of players were stuttering the first like day or so. But then they kind of players complained, and they immediately switched out every single one like the night of. So they seem to do. They take feedback extremely well, and it was beneficial. We were in Copenhagen, which I believe is where Blast has a lot of operations running out of. So they adapted well. They're very adaptive, and other than that, the player managers were fantastic. It was pretty well structured. Sometimes ESL, I think, was a little less structured with how they run things, and
That's a
sometimes it
nice
was a
way to
little
put
more
it.
random. Yeah. Yeah. So it's I think they showed improvements in a lot of things they got wrong initially, and then just how they ran things when we were actually at the LAN was actually pretty fluid. I liked a lot of it. So I honestly nothing but good things to say after this first LAN. As long as we that feedback they took, as long as that's the starting point for the next LANs, I think we're in a good spot. And production was fantastic. I thought actually they killed it in terms of like the actual on show broadcast. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting with Blast at the moment.
Yeah, I think probably like speaking of like those PCs, did you see the April Fool's post somebody made about the grand finals?
No, no.
Somebody was just like we're like committed to competitive integrity, and there were technical issues for G2 as seen in this video, and they showed like the video of like the framey PC, and there's like we're rescheduling the like grand finals to like accommodate like these. I was just like it was really well worded, and like
it looked legit.
Like it looked legit, but it was so over the top that it was like clearly an April Fool's joke. But yet some people still are just like, yeah, NA still has a chance. It's like, and you never know on Twitter like if that person like is in on the joke or if they actually have that much copium.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, I would love for that to be the reality too. But I'm glad I didn't read that on April Fool's, because that was probably still too close to the actual major. So
yeah, because that was like the next day, and so like timing wise too, like it kind of worked out to be like a pretty decent April Fool's joke.
That's, I mean, the Twitter, Rocket League Twitter, Rocket League Reddit sometimes can put out some good content. So that's I gotta go look back at that one.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm trying to find that fine line of like hyperbole and like Twitter impression farming and not completely sounding like an idiot.
Yeah. Like, well, that's, I mean, that's a legit conversation to have with, especially with like casters, I feel like. And yeah, just the general NA versus EU kind of storyline that was forming. Definitely a lot of, I think, overblown takes. Probably not, in my opinion. If they're sane, I don't think a lot of it's genuine. I think it's just, impressions are big in the modern entertainment industries, so I get it. But yeah, some of that stuff is crazy that I read.
Yeah, it was funny. I put out I'm trying to think who I was talking with on the podcast about, but I was talking about how like I don't know if you've watched hockey at all.
A little bit, yeah.
So like I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, they removed like the 2-line pass rule. So like you could do like a stretch pass and like pass it basically from your end over the center line over the so you could have like these long passes. And ever since then, like the speed picked up, and
I didn't realize they took that out. Okay.
Yeah. And so you can pass it over 2 lines. You can't pass it over 3, or it's icing.
Gotcha.
But,
okay.
But since then, like the pace of the game kind of picked up, and teams started to use something called motion offense. And if you look at it from a Rocket League player's perspective, it looks like a Rocket League rotation.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, it's like Rocket League changed the way the NHL plays their game. It's like, look at this.
Yeah.
So I said that like half jokingly, but like fundamentally, like the structure and stuff is similar enough.
Yeah. Right.
That I don't know. Technically, it could be true.
I've always, I mean, I think it's pretty normal at least to look at if there's a sport you want to draw inspiration from to find some parallels. It's hockey with Rocket League. Soccer's too slow paced, soccer's too zonal, soccer's too non-rotational based. And that's, I feel like, the next closest sport you could look at, so just because of the ball and everything. So hockey definitely, that's kind of where I want to draw future inspirations from when it comes to trying to find like any real life parallels.
Yeah. The funny thing is when I said that, like I clipped it and put it out on Twitter, and Nick immediately got DMs from, I think it was Jack and I think Chronic. It was just like, is he really saying Rocket League changed the way the NHL played? It's like, you never know. Like there's always some weird, but that was one of my failed Twitter impressions.
Yeah, it's hard to put out a statement like that, because like the casters are always tweeting, or like some of the big figures in Rocket League are always tweeting, and so like people are used to the hyperbole. So when like a JC Hammer podcast tweet comes out, maybe they just take it as this guy's just there's no joking about this. This is what he really. That's at least how I guess that was taken.
I think it's also just people haven't like hung out with me to like
Yeah,
realize like I try to be
exactly.
I try to be a sarcastic asshole in the best way possible, you know?
Yeah. It's not a bad way to go about it.
Yeah, we I'm trying to think where like the amount of roasting we do to each other like during scrims is
What, you and Nick,
or just the
or the
entire team
players
in
as well?
general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Nick's definitely an asshole too. So
Yeah.
you know, it seems if you're trying to, go about that way too, it's the personalities align for sure. So.
Yeah. It's all really good vibes. Like you know, like once we hit the pitch on game day, you know, like it's a little more
Yeah.
serious and stuff like that.
Of course, of course.
You know, during scrims, at the right time, we'll roast each other just to keep vibes going. You know,
Of course, of course.
just, you know, hanging out with the boys.
Yeah, you got to keep scrims, somewhat lighthearted.
Yeah, it can't be serious all the time, and then everybody just hates the game. You know,
Right. Exactly.
what is it that like you guys do during scrims to like keep it funny and light?
There's there's like Daniel has this great aspect to him where, if you've watched him maybe at like the solo queue event
Mhm.
when they would have him on for just like interviews and stuff, he has this aspect to him where pretty much anything he says is funny because just the way in which he says it, and sometimes just the topics he brings up are just like very random but hilarious. And so honestly, like a lot of it rides on his back. Like he will say something and just the whole team will be dying because whether it's someone on the opposing team has just made a play and he just starts shit talking him, or just anything of the sort, he kind of definitely, a lot of it lies on him. But outside of that, I mean, we're all also pretty joking. Usually I like to try to, especially when I'm like very locked in and like we're in multiple weeks of practice in a row, just to keep practice fresh and just to keep things, not from turning into a day of just like everyone's quiet or everyone's kind of low energy. Like I always try to bring in some sort of like current event happening and just like get conversation going. Just something out, not even necessarily Rocket League related, but just, it's it's important to, like you said, keep it lighthearted, keep it not super serious, but keep people still like emotionally and mentally invested in what's going on around them.
Yeah, I think my main way of doing that is making like really cringe dad jokes.
Yeah,
Or-
yeah,
or just like pulling something like out of history and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
I forget, somebody typed something and they like forgot the vowels, and so anytime, because I'm a Stargate fan, anytime somebody says something about that, like I'm immediately thinking, oh, they've solved Egypt. Or they've solved ancient Egyptian, and I'm like, that's a perfectly funny joke to anybody who has seen Stargate,
Right.
the original movie.
Yeah.
I love Living by a Train, by the way. It's really great. I don't know if you can hear it or not.
Oh yeah, things flying by. That's not
Yeah.
good.
But anytime that this also helps keep scrims light every now and again. It's like,
Just the train.
yeah, it just drives by. It's like,
Yeah.
they're like, why'd you mute mid sentence? And I'll just unmute, and they'll be like, oh, train.
Yeah, that's why.
But no, like that's a joke within the movie. And so when they brought that up, I was just like, yeah, it's just this. And me being 30, I was just like, oh wait, they definitely don't even know what Stargate is, let alone catch that joke. And
Yeah.
so now I make even more of those jokes because it's more funny to laugh at me attempting to make them laugh than
Yeah.
it is the actual joke.
Yeah.
And so,
That's actually, that's a good point too. I think just with how young the roster has become, bringing on Beastman and Dan, they their sense of humor is completely different from my sense of humor, in the sense that there is like genuinely a generational gap between us, and what they see as funny now is like just a world's difference from what I see. So that in itself is funny in scrims too, because like them finding certain things funny, me finding them like stupid, and then vice versa is like also just like it generates a lot of topic and a lot of conversation, a lot of laughs. So that too has kind of been a kind of a blessing, honestly. Just the fact that that dynamic exists is pretty funny and just keeps the team again laughing.
Yeah, and I think it's good just like to a certain extent having that generational gap.
Yeah, yeah,
Just that way it's like you'd call them your friends and stuff like that, but like you
yep,
want to be like the older brother type
correct,
friend.
right,
So that way it's just like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that stupid thing with your money. You
yep,
can if you want to, but you're probably gonna regret it. Or like
yep.
you know,
I mean, yeah,
insert
but
whatever situation
it's-
a little
we
brother would get into.
we had situations like that at LAN. I mean, those guys like actually like if you don't tell them to like eat and have a proper meal, they they won't eat and have a proper meal, and
Yeah.
like they'll show up to a a scrimmer game tired. Like there's genuine like learning moments. I had to learn. I was like, oh, like I'm not watching like a Jane Epps or Chicago anymore, who like fully take care of themselves. They're fully functioning adults and they've like lived on their own and everything. So like that's what they're used to. I'm like working with like kids that are still living at home. So they I in a way, right, like need to act like an older brother, or just some like respected figure that kind of tells them what to do, not necessarily like advises them what to do, but like in certain situations be like, you have to do this.
Yeah. And I think also that comes down to like you got to build that relationship
Right,
for
right,
that trust to be there. Like
right.
like if for some reason we swapped places and I was now coaching G2, if I came in there and said that to them like tomorrow, they'd be like, "Who are you?" Like,
Yeah,
why? Like,
yeah, yeah.
we bring Satthew back. Who are you? Like there's that real. It's not just the position of coach, but the
Right,
relation that you have with them and that you build with them. That's important.
exactly,
And I think
exactly.
that's what a lot of people are kind of forgetting about, like the leadership roles. Is
Yeah,
it's not just okay, cool. I have the title of coach, therefore everybody respects me on the team,
right,
and therefore they're gonna do what I say. You know,
right,
you got to build that relationship, and I think that's
right.
something that I feel
It's
like
not easy.
it's not easy, but also like it's something that's not taught well.
Right, right.
Like
It's kind of like an innate
especially
ability, or
yeah,
like you experience it and you learn how to build those relationships.
yeah, or you just watch what is it, Ted Lasso, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
I feel like that's a guaranteed or a requirement now to be a coach, is to watch Ted
yeah.
Lasso. Uh,
Yeah, honestly, from what I've seen of that show, yeah, I've watched like the first half of the first season. I need to get Apple TV to finish it, but yeah,
yeah,
it definitely touches more on the emotional side of things, and I like that. I like that a
yeah.
lot.
I think that and Moneyball, like those are the two.
Oh, yeah,
Like if you want to become a coach, those are the two shows, I guess, movies that you have to watch.
yeah,
Uh,
I
uh,
like that. I like those two as a selection.
yeah. What
But
coaching movies did you watch up, or I guess like sports movies that like kind of focus around
yeah,
the coach?
it's less, I guess. Like, no, I mean, there's still aspects to it. But you ever watch Miracle? So getting back on
Oh,
the hockey topic,
oh yeah.
that's like one of my favorites. I used to watch that with my dad like so many times growing up. I because like obviously the story of it,
Hmm.
the college Americans beating the Soviets was inspirational enough, and America and a pride everything. Um, but they show a lot of behind the scenes like emotional aspects to it too, as well as just Herb's coaching and everything. So yeah, I that's probably like honestly my big one is my big sports movie is Miracle. Big fan of that.
Yeah, I think Coach Carter and I think Remember the Titans are probably the other two
Oh yeah,
like
yeah,
instant classics. Like
yeah,
when it comes to those type of movies.
yeah.
Oop. I was working on an edit for because I'm trying to think. I think it's his name's Ringa, who like does like the Nick edits on like those really hype edits that just you know exactly what I'm talking
I
about.
love those. I love
Uh,
those.
I was joking. I was thinking of like rewriting the script for where he takes him out to I'm trying to think, was it Gethsemane Park or from Remember the Titans? He like has
Okay.
them all in the lunchroom. He's like, "Perfection, gentlemen." Like, if you drop a pass, you will run a mile, and just like redoing that, but
Yeah.
Rocket League related, and just putting Nick's face over it, and then like me in the background, and every time it pans to a player, just like sticking, you know, AJ or Scissor Nast's face
Yeah,
over it. And
yeah,
I was just like,
yeah.
that would be really funny.
Oh, that
But
would bang on Twitter.
yeah,
That'd be good. Yeah.
so that's that I think is probably one of the most quotable movies too.
Oh yeah,
especially as like a '90s kid, you know.
that's one I definitely have to watch back too. Because while I'm a '90s kid, obviously, I was '99, so I was just on that, just on that edge. That's definitely one I need to watch back because I was young when I last saw it.
Yeah, that was back when like Yo Mama jokes were like
Oh
just
yeah,
like
oh yeah,
really starting to pop off, and
oh yeah.
oh yeah,
People still wearing like super oversized clothing, and
oh
the
yeah,
'90s were great though. I miss the '90s. I actually think that was potentially peak living back then.
oh yeah. Like it's the '90s were, or I would say not necessarily the '90s, but like the early 2000s.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because like
That time period.
that's when all the experimental like cartoons and
Oh
stuff,
yeah,
like the really wild and out there stuff.
yeah,
Because you had what, like Teen Titans, The Clone Wars,
yeah. Yep,
Static Shock. You
yep.
had Codename Kids Next Door.
Oh yeah, classic.
Yeah, like all these things that none of my players know of, and it's sad.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but I guess
They missed out. They
yeah,
missed out.
they
Same
really
with my
did.
guys.
It's like
Yeah.
Boomerang was
Oh yeah.
yeah, when they used to speaking about throwing it back, like they'd take throwbacks from what, like the '60s, and like
Yeah, you
what
just
was
watch
it
the
like?
Jetsons every morning on Boomerang.
Yeah, like I'm trying to remember who was it. Richie Rich.
Yeah.
I think what were some other good ones. These were the Flintstones, obviously.
Yeah, Flintstones is a classic too. Yeah. I'm trying. Yeah, it was mainly, honestly, it was mainly Flintstones, Jetsons for me when Boomerang was on. Just because it's like, back then they also like on TV. I mean, I guess that still works the same way, but TV is just a lot less popular now. But they just used to have the same slots every morning, so it's like I'd be eating my cereal and it was Jetsons every time, guaranteed, no questions asked. So yeah, that's kind of what I grew up on before school every day.
I feel like on-demand TV like kind of ruined everybody's schedule.
Agreed.
Like,
On demand everything. It's the same with like YouTube, same with Twitter. It's like you can get exactly what you want when you want it.
Yeah, like you don't have to plan around. Hey, Mythbusters is coming on at 8, so we're gonna eat dinner at 7 so we can sit down and watch Mythbusters together.
Yeah,
like there's.
It's really just sports is still the only thing that scratches that itch. I think that's why sports lives on. And sport, I mean, there's obviously way more to it than that, but sports entertainment lives on and continues to be such a driver and such a money maker, just in the whole umbrella of like entertainment.
Yeah, like that's having that schedule, I think. I don't know, maybe that's what caused the generational gap between us and them,
Honestly, yeah.
Like we may have solved it,
Yeah, someone shipped this. Someone shipped this. We need to write an article on this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what do you think when it comes to, I guess, since we're on this like generational gap thing, what do you think has been like the generational gap between like the old guard and the new guard of players? Like, is it their perspective of the game? Is it the mechanics and pioneering stuff versus, I guess, refining stuff?
Yes, that's so. The new guard, like you said, I think they are pioneers, especially when it comes to different mechanical executions. I think they take much more pride in refining those like said mechanics, being able to be creative on the ball, being able to do a lot of different things on the ball. Whereas the old guard, I think, really, I mean, it's always the old head versus like the new guys like argument, but it's like I think there's truth to it. It's the old guard really took into their stride the ability to, one, obviously fundamentals were very refined, and just like your shooting, your aerialing, where you are on the field, were very meticulous, and they're very meticulous about it. But I think they also kind of had, I don't know how to exactly put it into words, but like that killer instinct when knowing that moment between it's time to now go at net and go at goal in probably the quickest, most efficient way possible, versus I'm still creating, I'm still in the aspect of I'm taking people out of the play, I'm looking to just kind of beat and then create space. And I think the old guard really, really kind of got that. And I think that's what, like, despite like some old guard players falling off near the top of the scene, they still like hold that, like they have that hold over like newer bubble players, because they get the winning aspect of the game. They get what it takes to win in like big moments and key moments in the game. They know when they are and how to execute upon them. But I also think, and this is kind of shifting towards like the EU versus NA thing, but I also think the EU, like the new EU kids, still get that, what the old guard gets. I think the new NA kids are still trying to learn that, or at least understand why that's important. That aspect of your game is important to have. So that's kind of the generational gap I see. But then it's not really generational in EU, I think. And I think that's actually partially because K-Dop, one of, not necessarily known for his mechanics or anything that he's doing on the ball necessarily, but his I think sight to see when it is that time to make a play and go at net and really put something dangerous on net. I think all the new EU kids pick that up while still having the mechanical prowess that new kids in general have. So I think that's how I see a lot of difference between the generational gap, but also EU and NA and their respective new kids.
Yeah, like I think that probably the biggest difference I see is if you look at when you're taking like an offensive play, I guess you'll call it. It used to be, let's get a 40% chance and then try and score.
Yep.
And now there's people who are just like, we need at least a 60% chance. Hey, Xperi's in the chat. He's saying that he loves you, by the way.
Love you too, Xper.
But I think like the EU kids, they'll be like, 30% is a good enough chance for me to try and score. Because, if I have a 30% chance, all we got to do is create that 3 times and we're scoring. Versus, I think like the older guard would be more like, all right, there's only a 30% chance. All right, let's try and get 40%.
I see.
Or maybe let's try and get 50% versus, taking more lower quality shots, I guess you'd say, or chances, versus just trying to build up the perfect chance where, the entire other team is demoed and you're just driving it straight into the open net. Yeah. Which I think is what NA leans more towards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or really even just like the old guard. Like I still see NA more as like the old guard and the EU as more like the new guard.
Yeah.
At least in that aspect to a certain degree.
Yeah. And I think NA has this profound ability with, and I think it's with new guard players. I think when that 30% opportunity arises, I think they also have this ability, and it's not a good thing, obviously, but they have this aspect to the game where they actually dwindle the opportunity and lower the likelihood of scoring because of time taken or method taken to go at net.
Yeah, like they're like, oh, well, I have a 30% chance now, but if I do this and I get this exact perfect touch, then I'll have a 32% chance to score.
Yeah, yeah.
Versus like,
and if that exact touch doesn't happen, it's like 10% then.
No, it's like, and then it's 90% the other way because it's like, oh,
right.
I didn't slot this perfectly at 70 miles an hour, and now Tox is pinching it back into our own net.
Right. And that's what I think like the new EU kids really excel at and still hold that like value that I think the old EU guard had. Is that ability? That's kind of that more more the words I was looking for, but like to not dwindle an opportunity and make it a lower percentage because of what you're doing on the ball. They sense when that opportunity, that 30% opportunity is there, and they like take it and they go for it. And I think that's a really good aspect to them. So, yeah.
So I think the other thing that I found more interesting when it comes to like the regional discussions, like Sam just seems to not care about defense. Like they are 100% in offense, and NA feels like they're 90% in defense until somebody messes up and overcommits, and then they'll try offense for like 10 seconds, and then they'll go back to defense. Or EU, and I would say you guys as well. You guys play more like an EU team structurally, in my mind. Like EU's way more midfield focused.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's interesting seeing how the priority on the pitch on like where do we win and lose the game? NA, it's like we're gonna win and lose the game on the goal line. EU's like we're gonna win and lose the game at the midfield.
Right.
Sam is we're gonna win and lose the game on their boost pads. It's really interesting seeing that approach. As far as like where teams prioritize. And do you think it really matters where they prioritize, or do you think it's you've got
like how refined it is?
Yeah, like how refined is it? And like, because if we tried to play like Falcons and like, because like we don't have TRK, like NASA's great and all, but like like that entire team structure, like with the twins and everything, like they are so good in that 1% of the field that they can build a team and a team strategy about being the best in the world at that 1% on the goal line. And so I think, do you start with the players, or do you start with the strategy and build the players, or where do you find that mix?
I always start with the strategy, honestly. Just I've always been my view on the game is like, give me 3 talented players, give me 3 of the more talented players, and we're going to abide by this strategy, which, I mean, like you correctly identify as like, we are more EU-like, I think, than a lot of NA teams. It's been like, honestly, even in 21-22, if you go back and watch how we played then, it was similar. Don't look at the next season. 22-23 was an experimental ass year. It was actually one of my least favorite years of coaching, not because of anything my players did, or it was self-inflicted, and it was just a lot of different outside factors too. But 21-22, I think, and this season so far, we've displayed at times like more EU-like play. I think Regional 1 was probably our most EU-like play as well. I think Regional 2, we looked more like an NA team, and then Regional 3, we were some weird mix that we were trying to figure out more. But then at the major, we kind of returned to more like Regional 1 type play. And I think it doesn't fully I think the either the NA or EU approach is LAN winning. I think you can win a LAN doing so. The SAM approach, where it's, as aggressive as it is, I don't think it can win in like the biggest moment. I think the pressure, no matter what the players are or how refined it is, I think will eventually get to them. I think it's like unsustainable, I guess is the best way to put it. Especially for a potentially 7-game series. But yeah, I think either of those two can win. I've talked with Kevpert at length about this, like the idea to counter, the idea to keep a team in and be more the aggressor. And I think both can win. I think the storyline is usually better when it's a counterattacking team, because then usually the series is closer, and usually a team like you see them like identify
Yeah.
those key moments and score like those, they have those 1-goal wins versus like Vitality last year in the finals. It was just a wipe
Yeah.
against BDS, and that I don't think they play the same this year. They've changed. I think around regional 2 or 3 they changed, and I talked with Alpha 54 about that as well. But I think then like towards the end of last year, I think they were just like that pure aggressive team. I think they played a lot like a lot of EU teams. I think they look to keep teams in. I think they look to dominate the midfield, and I think we saw that in the finals. And that's why I kind of lean more towards that, because I seek to achieve a victory like that where it's just so dominant that it's just like there's no questions asked. This is the best team in the world, and that's kind of why I lean that way. It's like that's the feeling that gives me more satisfaction. But there's plenty of coaches, and rightfully so, they love those close wins, or like to feel, because like if you counter someone, that there is also like a special feeling to that.
Yeah.
Where you can say everything went to plan, we executed exactly where we needed to, and we just caught this team out. That I think also a lot of times, like if you're playing on the counter, it looks like you're getting dominated, or it looks like you're getting out pressured, but then when you still win a series like that, there's like its own special feeling to that. So yeah, I think it's fine to prioritize either of those ways of playing, and on the day it's just going to be who's less nervous and who's refined their actual game plan more, and who executes on it better. I don't think one is inherently better between those two, but the over aggressive Sam approach, I still we always like in 21-22 we always loved playing Furia, because we were like, we're not going to lose on LAN ever. We were really, really confident because of that reason. So yeah.
Yeah, I was hanging out, and I think it was Pirelli's chat during the when they were playing LG, and I was just like, like Furia, the way they play is they will either embarrass you or they will look like they will get embarrassed.
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
I think you could look at like them versus LG in Swiss, and then them versus Vitality in playoffs. I think it was them embarrassing versus getting embarrassed.
Yeah. And I think that's the fun part about watching Sam. Like, just purely from an entertainment view, like not from a strategic view. It's like they're playing like they're gonna win every 50, and they're going to pre-jump their own pre-jumps. Like, I'm trying to remember who it was, or like what the order was, but like I think it was gosh, I forget. This was like two years ago. It was one of the like Sam regionals, and I think Card like went for an air dribble, and then Yan pre-jumped him, and then Kaio pre-jumped the pass that they were setting up. So like Card went up with the air dribble to like do the classic Furia fake out, and then as that's happening, Kaio, or one of them anyway, jumps up to like do that, but instead of passing or shooting it like they normally do, they passed it off to the side, and the other guy had already pre-jumped that pass. And so it was like this triple pre-jump that just like personified like either this is going in, or this ball is going in somebody's net in the next 5 seconds. Let's hope it's yours,
And I think actually G2 prior to me joining, I think they kind of also live by that fundamental idea. It's like someone's getting scored on. It could be us, but it's likely to be y'all, but it could be us. It's not an insane likelihood that we don't get scored on. So yeah, that was actually one of the bigger things I like initially coming into the team change, because I think second man was undisciplined, third man was even more undisciplined. It was crazy. It was a sight to see. But it was always hard. Like if they were individually better than the other team, the series was always going to be a wipe every time. So yeah.
Yeah, Xperia says, I think the way EU playstyle evolves is it keeps making players have to evolve and keep getting better, which will keep making the entire region better.
Uh-huh. Let me think about that. So I
Yeah.
think the way playstyle evolves, it keeps making players having to evolve, keep getting better, which will make the entire region better. I mean, I think I think EU is more ahead of the curve
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to, and I think like what they prioritize, I think in the long run is better. But again, that's also my personal opinion. But I think there's more agreement in Europe on a general idea of how to play the game. And so yes, I think a majority of their players will play that way. And so at that point, you're just finding the best talents and they all kind of understand how the game should be played. Versus NA, I feel like there's a little less agreement. I think there's a bit more variability between how teams play, but to like a fault, because there's some teams that I'm genuinely like, what the hell is going on? Like, what are they doing? And I think also I think also the bubble scene and NA is just a lot more disconnected from the pro scene than EU.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors. I don't know if it just fully revolves around this EU play style, but yeah, there's some assistance to it in like the development of their players. I think they're a lot more in tune in Europe with each other on like the few general ways they think the game should be played, and so players will just naturally kind of learn how to play that. And their ranked sessions are also, I think, a lot more productive and beneficial to players than NA ranked is.
Yeah, I would hard agree with that. Like it's the way whenever I'm doing like replay reviews for people, like it's very difficult to be like, okay, like you're playing in NA, so like as a second man, should you be pushing up this aggressive? It's like it would work if your third man is on the same page.
Right, exactly.
But is your third man thinking he's second man because he's on the same side of the field as the guy with the ball, and so therefore I'm behind first man, so therefore I am second man.
Right.
Like,
and it genuinely feels like there's a lot of NA teams that even haven't made that distinction, which is like, that's like initial, that should be like first week or 2, 3 weeks of a team, like sorting that out, sorting out what the page actually is. And obviously that changes throughout a season.
Yeah.
That's not easy to do necessarily too. Again, you have to have a good leader. You have to have confidence in what you're doing. You have to have proof that it works, or that it at least works for your team. It's not easy, but that should be a step that any like top 12, top 16 team has made already.
Yeah.
And
I think also like the unwillingness to, at least from my experience, I'm not going to out any players specifically, but like in dealing with like some of the bubble teams and bubble players that I've come across, it's been like, well, my former coach or somebody that I really like and respect said that this is the way that Rocket League is supposed to be played. It's like, this is the way Rocket League can be played.
Right.
Is it the end all be all? No. And like, that's where I've tried to approach, like when I started talking about systems, just like, I think I'm further ahead in the thinking mainly just because like I've worked on like a language to try and describe everything.
Right. To have that like proper jargon to back up. And like properly identify things.
And like to discuss it and like bring that stuff forward to where like you could have an intelligent conversation. It's just like, like in a stacked system, like this is first, this is second, this is third. This is the general idea of what they do, But here comes the train again.
Man, that thing's got a lot of deliveries.
Oh yeah. It's being 30 miles from one of the larger shipping distribution points. We've got, I think it's like 4 or 5 different like highway routes. And so,
oh my gosh,
like, and then plus we've got a river. So, But, back on topic, like, just like, that's where I was just like, okay, like, this is my favorite system. This is where I think is most effective right now. But there are these other systems and general schools of thought that have worked at a professional level.
Correct.
Structurally look similar. Like, I would say like old method in LG structurally play very similarly, like just by the way they position on the field.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
Old Method I would have to look back at.
that was
LG
like,
I think are a very unique team, but
yeah,
Old Method I would have to look at to compare.
yeah. I would say the main difference between Method and LG, other than mechanics, is
Right.
they're actually conscious of having a third man, you know. But like that's what like a lot was getting all those clips because they would just set up field. Like there would be somebody like always at midfield or further up, and you know that's a similar, at least in structure, to LG.
Right.
I think LG does it much better than Method. I think
Right.
for
I think
obvious reasons.
They're and besides like obviously like the mechanical gap that just naturally came with time. That first man I think. With Method, it was nice back then, but that would be so inefficient now to have someone just sit like that. So now, right, LG, has a guy that still sits behind a little bit, but then looks to demo because they've obviously trained that into their players for a long time. And it's not just like your general look for a demo on the way back. It is like this is where the other team naturally positions. This is where you're going to find their second or third man, depending on, who we're playing, who you want to kill. And they go for that guy. They put a lot of thought into that. So yeah, I see what you're saying with that, with like their spacing and their general like positioning. Yeah, I see the similarities with them. But yeah, the way in which they utilize where those actual guys in those positions is way different, obviously.
Yeah, like LG is definitely probably the most unique team in Rocket League from a structural standpoint.
Agreed.
So that's where I think when it comes to like the going back to like dealing with like the bubble scene and like the development of it is there are plenty of people who like they have a decent idea of how the game can be played and like hey, if you execute mechanically, you'll be a top 16, top 8 team like so just get better mechanics and do my theory. Like that's the mentality that NA seems to have at the bubble scene level. Which to a certain extent you do need the mechanics to get up there.
Of course.
Which is good, but I feel like they're missing out on all the different ways of thinking about the game, and so as soon as they come across a team that doesn't play normal, I guess you'd say, or their way of doing it, they're like, why is that second man doing that? It's like, well, one, that's their third man and their way of thinking, and two, like you're demoed, so of course, like like they're demoing you because they see what you're doing and they realize that there's other things that you can do other than sit behind first man as second man.
It's exactly.
Like, like that's where I think when it comes to like developing the bubble scene, I guess in NA, like what do we need to do as coaches and how do we find that balance between developing the next generation and giving away our strategies to a point where, okay, cool, thanks Satthew for giving me your game plan. Now I can therefore counter strat every specific thing you do. And GG's, thanks, like that's the weird balance that I think I'm trying to find, in myself. And I think also like, people like Kev Pert and Verge, like we're all trying to find that. We don't want to gatekeep information per se, but to a certain extent we have to. And it's like, where do we find that line and how do we find that balance?
Yeah. So from a coaching standpoint, I've always liked just going to an individual player, like bubble player, that I think I rate pretty highly. Like this guy could maybe actually be a professional player, just based on his mechanics, based on his like general decision making that I've seen from him. It's like, okay, this guy's potential. So let's try to steer, let's do a couple of replay sessions and let's try to steer him. Again, it's my way of thinking. It's not necessarily the right way, or there is no correct way to play Rocket League, like you said. But like, I'm gonna point him in a direction that's like proven, been pretty confident in. I think that certain other good teams also do and execute well. And let's at least give him some sort of thinking about the game where he can like learn and grow with this. But from, it's hard to develop these players if they're not just being in a system, as like if they're not in a team, because like those examples I'm kind of talking about are working with players that are kind of LFT or like looking for a team or maybe gonna form something. The way to go about obviously a lot of it's out of our control. I could talk about the bubble scene for actual like weeks about where improvements need to be made beyond just like the culture side of things. And I think the general lack of respect, I think the bubble players have for like even current pros exists, but also, their willingness to kind of really like try to delve deeper into the game and think about it more in like a team based sense. Cause I think that's like a lot of what NA lacks is like understanding where you are and the action you take on the ball, how it affects the one or two behind you, and like why you should really kind of take a more structured approach in like whatever decision you're making in order for like a greater goal or greater like effort for the team. So getting on that understanding with your teammates. So I think more coaches in general need to exist in a lot of these teams and push a structure, push a general idea. Doesn't have to be anyway, it can be unique like LG. It can be more like copy and pasted from like a top team. Either way, you can look at their ideas, you can look at their tendencies, and you can try to emulate some of it, at least in a general sense, and then you kind of find your own little niche quirks to your team that you can add in yourself. So I think more coaches need to take that step, and more bubble teams need to take that step. But from our standpoint, it's tough. Like, again, you don't want to gatekeep. Eventually, at some point, when I feel like when I'm done coaching, maybe I'll look into making content to where it's like, this is what I did as a coach. This is some of my like best times as a coach. These are some of my like fallbacks as a coach. This is where I messed up. This is where I did well. As like kind of a benchmark for future coaches. But like you said, in the moment, I don't want to do that from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah.
But I don't know. As coaches, I don't know. I want like I get the urgency to want to help because we want to make our region as competitive as possible and as competitive as Europe. But at the same time, I think a lot more of the issues lie in the culture. I think it'd be, NA kind of needs to find their KDOP again because, Squishy's retired now. Garrett, hasn't, and NRG hasn't been doing especially, like we need a top pro that, so, it transitioned from KDOP and now they have like Zen, for example. Yeah. And kind of every player coming up can kind of look at Zen and be like, this is a good blueprint to look at. And if you have a bunch of players that are Zen thinking players coming up, you're in a good position as a region.
Yeah.
NA doesn't really have that right now. I think someone kind of needs to establish. I guess the closest thing we've had is First Skiller, but again, he keeps to himself very much so. Doesn't have a YouTube channel, doesn't have a Twitch that he really uses ever. We need someone, I think, to be that kind of leading role model, I guess is the best way to put it. But I know this is like a tangent because you're just like, what do we do as coaches? But basically my point is besides what we do with our own teams and the occasional, trying to push a bubble player that has potential in the right direction, I don't know if there's much for us to do currently. Besides making, having podcasts like these two and just speaking more on these topics, and hopefully there being hopefuls out there that listen and that, act on it. But from a coaching standpoint, I don't think there's a lot to do with a lot of these players. I think it's more pushing people into like, you should really start thinking about the game. You should really start looking at teams that are doing well and maybe looking at emulating some of that. You should look into building good habits around the game. Think about the game in an optimistic way, not a pessimistic way, in the sense that I feel like there's a lot of NA players that get on the game, they lose a couple games, they're like, God, this game is so shit, and then they just continue to have a bad session. Just a lot of cultural stuff like that, I think, is really the most we can do, and will have the biggest effect on the development of the bubble scene.
Yeah, I think just piggybacking off of that, it's hard to be like, I feel like sometimes people are so locked into their view of the game,
yeah,
that they miss so much of what teams are doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And shout out to Ulti. He's updated his Twitter profile to student of Rocket League systems.
Okay.
And what's funny is the whole reason I even started a podcast was I think 2 years ago, when I first was getting into coaching. Me and him were talking because I'm a new coach. He was one of the first coaches in the bubble scene that I ran across.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, man, so I think systems is the new big thing. He's like, nah, Rocket League's too unpredictable. And I was just like, well, he's like, well, what about this? What about this? And so we had this back and forth about it. And not to gloat, but I was right. But no, I say that in jest. But we were talking about how once you limit your view of the game to this this is first man, this is second man, this is third man, and it's always in this structure.
Yeah.
Then you can miss out on, okay, well, what if they have a different job here? I think probably one of the best things to happen for NA is Scholar inventing the word extension, because it gave a term for that second man who's not behind you directly.
Right.
And but now everybody is just oh, well, just in this circumstance, they're still trying to formulate everything into that NA way of thinking versus, okay, what if this person's not a second man or an extension? They're, an enforcer, or something like that. So how can a team or a player, I guess you'd say, break out of the traditional NA way of thinking, so that way they can see what other teams are doing that don't see in the way, or that aren't seeing through the lens of NA? They're seeing through the lens of a European player, or
Yeah, I think it's it's hard because obviously that's if you've thought about the game this way for the 4 or 5 years you've played it to this point, that's very, very hard habits to break. It's honestly it's an ego check. I think it's saying, being willing to accept you're wrong, or could be wrong, and really, you kind of have to become a student of the game, in the sense that you really ask a lot of questions. You say, why is this player doing this? Why is it different from what I'm doing? How, you compare what you do to them, and then you figure out why they're doing it. And then you and obviously if it's a good player, the nice thing is it's you have results, you have players on teams that this is proven. So you don't have to go through the aspect of, will this work? You just have to go through the aspect of understanding why they're doing it and how it's different from what you're doing currently. So I think usually going about it that way, it's you look at the comparisons and then you figure out why, is kind of how I usually approach problems like that, and trying to find new ways of thinking, or at least break what I think are old bad habits, is the best way to go about it, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I guess where do you think the game is heading, meta wise? Do you think it's going to swing back to that individual style of play, or do you think, because that's the cycle I've always noticed, is it's the best team wins, and then Zen shows up And yes, they're still a great team, but it's more on like that individual. I mean, you could even to a certain extent look at this last major with like Juicy stepping up,
Yeah.
like both great teams, but Juicy is the one who stepped up. So is it more individualistic now? And then I'm sure like this next major, it's going to be the best team that everybody does everything.
Yeah.
And so like, do you think that cycle is going to continue, or do you think that's
I think with top level teams, like at the highest level, I think we've almost fully escaped the like this tournament win was purely based on like centering like a play style around a certain player and allowing them to kind of be free and do whatever they want. I think we've already kind of gone past that. Zen at the like I still like you said, they're still a good team, and I still think that is why they, won Worlds. Especially I think Farah does a really good job at disciplining what he expects out of his like players in each role that they're in at a specified time. And I think you see that with the Carmine team too. I think they're a really disciplined team. I have a lot of respect for what they do and how they play and how I think that they think about the game. So I think we've escaped kind of that where it's just like this is kind of random. I think it's all still going to be based on, how a team comes in and how they execute on their play style and their structure, their system. And I don't think it necessarily cycles. I think we'll see. I guess I don't attribute like Zen popping off winning Worlds in that way to it being like an individualistic outlook on the game from them. I think it's just his talent just like I guess shines especially large in that moment.
So you're saying that the team created the space for him to be mechanical?
Yeah, yes, but also like in the sense that sometimes it's a little bit of luck too. Like it was sometimes not exactly luck. I think what's it called? Sorry,
you're trying to think of the word. Yeah.
No, right. Also, I need to turn off my Discord notifications. Other than luck, I think sometimes the timing, it's meant to be. Again, Zen's like a more naturally reserved player. He sits third more often than his two teammates, and so that part of the game is somewhat planned, somewhat predetermined. But in Rocket League, obviously he's not always third man. Obviously he's not always sitting back. Obviously he's not playing that role for 100% of the game.
Yeah.
And I think for certain tournaments, it's like there's an aspect of luck where it's just like the right opportunities fell to him at the right time. And that's why it looked more individualistic. But it's like it was kind of the perfect storm of things. And like the same with Juicy. What they execute on every day and the structure they play allows for that to potentially happen, allows that for potentially any of them. Now, with Gentlemates, it's a little different, but with like a team like Carmine, for example, I think they play in a way which at any point, someone could look absolutely like this system is meant for them, but in reality, it's just like the timing in which the chances fell to them, it just on that day. Because it's like, for example, Rise, it was either against Falcons or it might have been against Falcons. He was like just going off in that series. And Rise is fantastic. But if there were a player on that team to be, for the structure to be built around, it wouldn't be Rise, or it wouldn't be him finishing off the opportunities that he was at that time in the series against Falcons. It's just it happened. They played for that to happen, in my opinion. But for any of the players to happen too. So I think we've kind of escaped that where it's like a system's built for this player or for them to get all the opportunities, and it kind of relies on them if they're like executing well on the day or not. I think we're past that, and it's more just in general, how's the team executing? Are they living out their play style that they've kind of want to, and are they just when the opportunity arises, are they putting them away?
Yeah. So you
It's
think
kind of
with
how I
the-
see it.
Yeah, you think that that's the skill ceiling has like there's not to say that there's not stuff left in the skill ceiling to like achieve, but you don't think like there's not going to be another like Justin where the team is built around him, you know, or a first killer where like the team is going to be built around him at least like back in the day.
Yeah, right.
and-
No, you're right. I don't think a major winning team will. No,
Mhm.
I don't think it's gonna. I think it in my in the way I view the game, I view that
Mhm.
as like inefficient.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
So-
with you on that. I think maybe
Yeah.
for like lower levels of play,
yes, that's still
like I
gonna
think
exist.
it's yeah, like that's always going to exist. You know,
100%.
you know,
Yep.
like college teams and stuff. Like you're going to have superstars
Yes.
and you're going to have
Yeah.
not superstars. You know.
Yep. Yep.
You know, I think that for lower levels, I think that's going to still exist. But I think like at the pro level, there's not enough space in the skill ceiling left for someone to be that all dominant force
Yes.
that
That's
you
yep.
just enable and go, here's the ball, let me create
Right.
space for you.
right. It's
And
like
it only
how,
be that person.
right, and like how I see it is like there will be series which they will look like that, but that's not
Mhm.
the intention. It's
Yeah.
just it just happened that way.
Yeah. It's like the team is performing as a team. It's just
Yep.
it happened to be that at that point in the rotation,
Yep.
somebody was going to be there. It just happened to be that person all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's again also how I view the game and how I
Mhm.
think a couple of the European teams view the game. And so I
Yeah.
think when we see certain performance out of them, that's why I call it partially by luck, even though some of their tendencies allow them to be in certain positions more often than their teammates. But
Yeah.
for the most part, yeah.
Like in general, it's like, you know, if two spaces need to be covered and they're both like equal distant, one is going to
Yes.
be favoring one of those positions
Yes.
more than the
exactly.
other.
Exactly.
But in general, it's, you know, both of those positions are going to be covered,
Yes.
and it's
It
just the
could
way
be
it
by
works
either.
out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not designed for it.
Correct. That's how I see it as, or how I see it cycling.
Yeah, I think that's the fun part now with now that skill ceiling, like there being so little left in it.
Yeah.
Like I think this is like the era in which like this is the era of coaches is like
Yes,
what I've
agreed.
coined.
Yep.
You know, trying to coin the phrase as is like this is where everybody that's top 8, you know, team level, or really, I'd say even maybe top 16. Like that may be pushing it a little bit, but like there's enough players, at least in NA and EU, that, you know, you can win a regional with any group of players.
Yes.
To a certain degree.
Yeah.
If the coach is pushing and developing
Yes.
and players.
Yes. Refining and
Yeah. Like I think this is where it's really going to start to separate out like those structures, and I think it's already happening. Like,
Agreed.
Because if you look at the support staff that you have, that Vitality has, that K Corp has, you know, we've built out our support system even more.
I need one. It's just me right now.
Oh, it's just you? Okay,
Yeah,
that just makes you even that much more of a god of coaches, you know?
No. I'm also fortunate to have the players I have. That's a big thing with it.
But no, like I think like that's, you know, I think that even more proves the point, you know, like this is where now the support staff and the support system is
Agreed.
showing more than it is the players' individual talent.
Yeah.
Because I mean, how many teams got to top 8 and once, and like that was it, you know? Like they pop off for one split, and it's like, well, or one regional or open qualifier to whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Right.
Like it's the teams that have like the support and the structure that are like consistently showing up there.
Yes. Correct. And like you said, this is the era of that. I think right now in Rocket League, you can honestly make huge strides just with the discipline aspect. It's like
Mm-hmm.
this is our general structure. If you discipline that enough, you will be very, very consistent, very competitive for majors. And then as we continue, it's going to delve more and more into like the really, really small things.
Yeah.
Right. So just like your trained habits in certain scenarios. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
that's where like but the first part is hard enough to get down, and the disciplining and the understanding that this is our structure, this is our general way of playing, this is how we're going to practice every day, and these are the things you're going to do every single day to make sure you do it under pressure as well. That in itself takes a whole split or two to develop, honestly.
Yeah.
So
I think it's going to be this is probably at least 2 or 3 years out, like before we're at this, like at the pro level, just because of how like fast paced it is. And then also just for like players to like start to be able to think and see the game in this way enough.
Right.
Because like when I was coaching the college team, like I was just like, hey, like here's like the 3 general things that teams typically do for like offense, and here's like what they work at. And I'd be sitting like watching, and as they got the ball and like went to go on offense, I'd be like, hey, run a stack spear, and they'd be like, cool, and they knew what to do, and they'd go out and execute that. And you know, like we were fairly competitive for the level we were at. And I think it's eventually, like, I think that's where Rocket League may head, just because it's going to be, you need somebody looking at that whole structure and saying like, hey, like on transition, like this is what needs to happen, and them knowing what that needs to happen. And then it's going to become even more of a chess match, because it's not just going to be about the execution, because, you know, if you know exactly what a team is going to do, it's relatively easy to fast arrows to the right spot. You know? And I think just as the speed of the game develops, you can't wait and read anymore. You've got to be more proactive. And so I don't think the game is there yet.
No.
But I see that's where I think the game is headed.
I think it's once you have all these pro players that are ingrained in their system, and hopefully in teams for like over a year, over 2 years, it's like when that becomes second hand and, you know, second nature. That then they can start thinking about it on the field in the moment, in like not predetermined plays, but in like, this is how we execute this scenario. I don't have to think about necessarily my positioning, my spacing, where I am in our rotation, what role I am at the moment. I already know. It's already been said to me that the information's been conveyed. Now I'm thinking about, this is how they're set up. We've seen this scenario specifically. This is how we execute here in the most efficient way possible. And that's the future. But gotta get those systems really in place, and gotta get players, like you had said it earlier too. You shouldn't be enclosed in one way of thinking, but when you are in a system, you should live and die by it. You should live and die by it. If you don't have that, then you can't win confidently. So that's definitely the future. I agree with you on that. Eventually it'll get to that point when I think players are comfortable enough in the systems that they're being taught or being pushed on.
I'm excited for it, because like this is where we get past the, oh, this team is aggressive, this team plays defensive, this team likes to bump. It's like, you know, like this very, very surface level. Like I'm ready for having that, you know, NFL red zone where they've got the field, and like, you know, we have our own system for drawing on the field that's not epic pen and circles. You know, like I feel like there's still so much left to develop, like on the strategic front. Then I guess also just speaking of the strategic front, Lethamir recently did his like pick ban system,
Oh
best of
yeah,
7 with like all the different maps.
yeah,
I I want to see that happen, like
yeah.
in some capacity, and like in some tournament, like even if it's just for fun. Like if we could get like like a miniature league going of just like
Does that
six
include like Rocket
teams.
Lab maps?
Yeah, like
Okay.
pillars and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I feel like I don't know. Like if we got 6 teams and we just did like a miniature league as like a test run, you know, but we'd have to get all the players on board with it, and like there's
Good luck.
no money involved with it, like
That's I think it would be cool to see, but I also think that's like a want because it's
yeah.
like a yearning for like you said, getting past that surface level.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to tough it out and
Yeah.
get the systems down and then eventually get past the surface level because I love the continuity and it's like this is the field you're playing on every time.
Yeah.
Structurally, there's no difference to it. What
Yeah.
is going to make the difference is how you execute on the play. There's not going to be a pillar in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Like, but
come on, we need to have
yeah.
pinch lineups in Rocket League. Like
yeah.
it's like put the ball on this specific spot and use this specific hitbox. So that way, it's like, oh no, they're using a Batmobile. They're going for this specific pinch lineup. Like like I think it would be funny if we had stuff like that. It would at least be entertaining. But I think we're
agreed.
I definitely appreciate the more structure of this is the field.
Yep.
Do you think we need a bigger field? Do you think that would like increase strategy, or do you think that would just increase air dribble bumps because now everybody has space to grab boost and
execute on that?
Yeah, like because I'm torn on it.
I've heard like bigger field be suggested. I've heard bigger goal be suggested. I don't know. I think I like the State Org games. Then I feel like we have blowouts, we have close games. I don't know. I still like the State Org games. Then I think to a degree, demoing's an interesting aspect to me because there's not many sports where you can like take out a player on the field without getting punished for it.
Yeah,
that's always been interesting to me. So I'd be interested to see how like demoing changes with like if a bigger space, you'd imagine it'd be harder to kill people consistently. So yeah, I don't know. I still like the games in. It'd be cool to test, obviously. Like I'd love to see this run. Also with like a bigger field, maybe do you need there's obviously going to be more big pads around the field, but like do you need a larger tank in general? Like more than 100, more than maybe 150 or something, 125? I don't know.
I think if you do that, you just make boost usage go down. Like you like effectively still a bigger tank, but still just keep it at 100. It's just now instead of when you feather, you're like getting rid of, I think like.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I think technically, like on the technical side of it, it's like you have 255 boost.
Yeah.
And so like you're using, I think it's like 30. I think it's like 30 per tick or something like that is what it works out to. Or this is like way back, like Rocket Lab or Gosh, who was it? I feel bad now.
Rocket Science?
Halfway dead.
Halfway dead.
Yeah, like he did a whole thing on that. Yeah. I think I account for half the views on his channel.
He during the remember when he did like the Bluetooth controller comparisons?
Oh yeah.
And like eventually figuring out that Bluetooth DualShock was actually like the most responsive. I mean, I lived by that. When I was a professional player, I like played on Bluetooth. It was, and I felt it. I felt the difference.
Yeah.
Before like polling rates could be unlocked in controllers with like third-party programs. That was my means. And I love his content.
He did so much. He's probably the most underrated person in like the Rocket League community, like especially on the professional level. Like with how much hard work he did to give us the information that mattered.
Yeah.
In a way we could understand it as not programmers.
Yeah.
Like
and I think people rate him, but it's just like he needs to be rated even higher than whatever that is. Like you said, he's underrated, but I don't want it to come off as like no one knows what he's done, because he, his stuff is well documented and it's received great response, but it just needs even more.
Yeah,
honestly, like he needs to be pillared.
Yeah,
but, for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, where was I going with that? I totally lost train of thought to brag on him. Where were we at? We were talking about what were we talking about? We just went on a tangent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we can at least agree that Halfway Dead is highly underrated.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
But no, oh yeah, Boost. That's what it was.
Oh, yeah. Oh, like and like in the use of like a bigger field.
Yeah, like I think you just take the boost usage down to like, maybe like 2/3. So like you still technically have the same amount of boost, and it still pushes you just as far. It's just it lasts a little longer.
I've always been interested in the aspect of like, so with a bigger field, whether it becomes like 4-on-4, 5-on-5, 6-on-6, whatever. What if you made it more soccer-like, more zonal, where
you
boost
have
is actually? Oh, well, maybe, but no, I was more so going in the aspect of still boost, staying on topic of boost, making it so every player starts with a certain amount, and it's more like a stamina aspect than this is something you can pick up and recharge. So it's like you have a finite amount, and like that's it for the game. There's no boost pads, no big boosts. It's just like it's more beneficial for you to stay in certain positions to conserve boost, essentially. But you can't control the ball like you can in soccer. So, but I've always been interested.
Yeah, I think that also like with that, like you having to like build a depth of rosters, so that way like you can sub out. It's like, okay, hey, you're just gonna go out and ball chase and make them use as much resources as possible, and your job is just to make them tired. And then it's like, well, then also like demos, how does that work? Like, is there an offsides? Like, like there's a lot more stuff you could do. But I think also like the more you make it like soccer, like I feel like the less it'll feel like Rocket League.
Yeah, agreed. And so, I only say that purely as a soccer fan, honestly, is why I even bring it up. Because I think Rocket League, again, it's beautiful the way it is, and that I like it being a closer cousin to hockey than soccer. So
so do you have a hockey team that you follow?
Not necessarily. I mean, being originally from Carolina, I guess the Canes would be the closest thing to following. I live like that, like the parking deck in my background is to the American Airlines Center, so I've been to a couple Stars games, but mainly the Canes, if anything. But I wouldn't call myself a hockey fan, honestly. I like the game, but I wouldn't call myself a fan.
Yeah, I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan.
Okay, yeah.
I remember, so I lived in Georgia when I was a kid, and there was the very first time I saw a hockey game, I was like 4 or 5, and I just see this dude get laid out on the ice, and I was just like, oh man, I hope that dude's okay. And then like all his teammates like started like swarming the dude that did it, and then like I see this like fight happen, and they're like 2-minute penalty, and I'm like, wait, that's only a 2-minute penalty? And then they like keep playing. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but I like those guys in black and yellow, and so I've been a Boston Bruins fan my entire life just from that moment.
Yeah, I mean that's that's something to go through as a young child to see someone get laid out and get so excited about that. Yeah, no, that's I mean, hockey is a special sport. Like it really does allow like a different level of like brutality, but it's like legal for the most part. Like and if it's an illegal move, like you said, it's penalty box for a little bit, then you're back out of there. So
they had the rule one first,
Yeah.
Once you drop the gloves, like you got to square up,
Yeah. Like there was that Rangers and Devils game the other day. Like off the face off.
Dude, I think the
It's,
Canucks Flames brawl was probably like the biggest,
yeah,
uh, at least in most recent history, where it was at least somewhat gentlemanly.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, that was quite the show.
yeah.
Uh, now I wonder what it would be like if like Rocket League players like had beef and like handled it that way. It's just like,
Just started swinging on land.
well, not swinging on land, but like I feel like we've gotten to that point with like the Spanish kickoff and twos,
Ooh, yeah.
where it's just like, yeah, we're just gonna bump and demo each other. It's like,
It's so effective though.
it
Like
is like,
so it's not it's not even purely from like a beef standpoint. It's purely like we're
yeah,
probably gonna score because of this.
yeah. But I think it
But
would be funny if like when you like demoed, like you had to do like some sort of like, you know, fight type thing in game or something. Like,
or
I
like
would,
what if you got 3 demos in a
mhm,
row?
mhm,
Like or like when you got 3 demos, like you had to sit
mhm.
out for like 30 seconds or something,
Yeah,
like a power play.
yeah. I think that would be an interesting mechanic, you know, or
Yeah.
something like that. I think it would be really fun to bring the knockout mechanics just into a normal game.
Ooh, yeah. Knockout was fun. Yeah.
Like, I think if you like remove the demoing portion of it,
Yeah.
but just like the
Yeah.
ability to like try and grab somebody or like, you know, send them flying, like I think that would be really interesting on a bigger field, as just
Yeah.
throwing in the knockout mechanics.
Just launching people.
Yeah. Uh, it's like, imagine like that would be probably like the most disrespectful own goal is if you grab the dude and flick him into the ball to like make him own goal.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that would be so hyped to watch, especially on land, you know? So imagine like you know, beast mode just flinging Juicy across the field into the ball to like make
Yeah.
him own goal it. Like, would
There
that
definitely
not be
feel
the
yeah.
most hype? You know,
And there'd be more of like a personal aspect to it too. You feel
yeah,
like, right? Yeah.
yeah. It's like who's the more defensive player? Who's like doing the backflips more? I feel like that also would make backflips like more useful,
Yeah.
because you know, like outside the half flip, like that's really not used much, especially in threes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really just you're canceling a fast aerial most of the time if you're backflipping.
Yeah,
Uh, so,
yeah.
yeah.
Most of the time, not even on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Modern state of DualShock 4s, sometimes their stick drift is a bitch, but yeah.
Yeah. Have you gotten on the Hall effect hype train yet?
Wait, the what?
Hall effect.
Hall effect? What is that?
So it's instead of using like the conductors, like it's the magnets for your sensors. It's what the Sega Dreamcast used, and that's why they still don't have stick drift even to this day.
Wait, what? Wait, so how does that? What do you?
So like, you know, like the
Yeah.
potentiometers that like read your joystick input.
Okay.
Instead of it being like a contact where it's like actually physically like rubbing up against it, it's just a magnet that's measuring the pole
Oh.
of and so if you ever get so as long as you like recenter your stick,
Yeah.
or if like your stick goes out, you literally just have to like pop off the actual thing and just replace just the spring that holds the tension of your joystick versus
I see.
yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. No, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, the melee community is like really like the people that like pushed it forward
Yeah.
recent, and then now like a whole bunch of other like third brand parties are starting to jump on it, but they aren't making the joysticks, springs, and stuff themselves that great.
I
But
see.
you know, I feel like that's something that like we're always talking about esports like needing revenue sources.
Yeah.
Why an esports org hasn't made their own Hall effect like controller
Yeah.
and be like, this isn't the so and so sponsor, you know, whatever. It's just like, no, like this is the G2 controller, and it won't break in 2 months. You know,
Yeah.
like, well, I feel like there's so many peripherals and stuff like that that, you know, there's space for, esports orgs to like design stuff that like they need and then be like, cool, everybody likes these,
It's got to be a cost thing or something, because I'm sure the R&D for just like making any of those products, I'm sure, is insane.
Well, here's the thing that like is specifically for Hall Effect is you remember the Sega Dreamcast, right?
Yeah.
That's when this technology came out.
Right.
At least for like that joystick specifically.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot on the table, like when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea even about that, about like the Sega Dreamcast having a controller that kind of absolved the whole stick drift issue. That's you would think too, with like some of the ways esports. I agree in the aspect of like, there's some ways that esports orgs choose to generate revenue, and I definitely like question it, because I'm like, is this worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Is the cost worth it? And then is the little amount of revenue you're actually generating worth it? And it's like, yeah, is there something more practical out there, like you said, designing their own controllers or peripherals in general, especially for orgs that aren't like partnered with a peripheral sponsor at the time.
Yeah.
Then there's obviously no conflict of interest there. But I wasn't even aware of that. So that's cool. I got to look into that more.
Yeah, I'll send you like a link to it afterwards.
Please.
So there's a couple of controllers. Like I said, they're not the greatest build qualities of yet.
Right. But the technology was there.
The technology's been there for a while.
Yeah.
And like I said, if all you have to do is pop out your joystick and replace a spring and then pop your joystick back in.
Yeah.
And then stick drift's gone. Like, it's worked for Sega Dreamcast for almost
Sypical used to do something like that. He used to deconstruct his controllers and like tighten, I guess, the joystick is usually what he was trying to do, because he played on the same controller for like 2 or 3 years.
That is impressive, and that also explains a lot.
Yeah, the all the stuff that happened at LAN and stuff with the Sypical controller too. But no, he was adamant about staying on that controller. I respected it. I mean, sometimes we had to, delay scrims by like 20 minutes because he had to pop his controller open and tighten things up again. So yeah.
So you, I guess we'll end with this. You hanging out for the eclipse, I take it?
Well, my roommate and I are about to go get, or Reynolds and I are about to go get like breakfast, because a new breakfast place opened up.
Ooh.
I gotta look at when the actual eclipse. Do you know what time it like is supposed to happen?
It's supposed to happen, I think, at like 1, like sometime between like 12 and 2.
Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff happening around Dallas. We might go like, see what's going on, but we didn't get the the glasses that you need, so can't look at it. Yeah.
It's you can look at it. You'll just, hate yourself for the next 2 years.
Yeah. So
like then you'll need the other type of glasses.
Right. So probably gonna stay relatively low key for this. But we should have just gotten the glasses earlier. That was kind of a misplay on our part. But there's a lot of cool festivities happening around Dallas, so I'm sure we'll walk into something.
Yeah. Well, hey, I guess it's been a fun time. I guess I'll let you guys go grab some breakfast. That got really southern really quick. That was occasionally my southern Georgia comes out.
That's I'm North Carolina. That's not as southern as Georgia, but it's still down there. And I love the South, honestly. How do you like Arkansas compared to, I guess, like Georgia?
So it's honestly like pretty similar. The biggest thing for me was we had a top 100 in the nation football team to a team that lost our homecoming game to a halfback dive down the middle with 2 seconds left.
Yeah.
It's like that was the biggest shock coming from Georgia to where I'm at now.
Yeah. Just the sports prowess.
Yeah. Just it. Like I think Yeah, I know at least 3 of the people that I would have graduated with made it to the NFL. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like, that
Okay.
was honestly the biggest shock. Everything else is pretty much the same.
Same or similar. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a
Yeah.
good conversation. We definitely hit some topics I never thought we would hit, but that was good. It's nice
Yeah.
talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It's been a
course.
lot of fun. Well, we got to definitely do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I love doing just, talking about the game because the game's not talked about enough. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you have a good one.
yeah, you as well. Thanks.